Singing response time now. Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Was a good friend of mine.
Nice, nice. Well guys, I'm Mike Schneider. I'm the Los Angeles Bureau Chief of TV Guide magazine. And as you saw just there, we love the X-Files for 20 years. It's been on our cover so many times. It's crazy. Oh, and by the way, you guys are all infected with this. It came with being at this panel. But thanks, I know a lot of you spent all night camping out for this. Front row, making it happen. All right, so let's go back to 1993. The top dramas on TV back then included Murder, She Wrote, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and Matlock. But then along came Mr. Chris Carter. He was a surfing aficionado who had started writing scripts on the side and working on TV, movies, and show. But inspired by shows of his youth like Kolchak the Night Stalker, he pitched a new show to Fox about unexplained phenomenon. That was groundbreaking, and here's what was really groundbreaking. It was a hit. A big old hit. Mulder and Scully and Skinner and the cigarette smoking man and Kolchak and all those guys completely changed TV history, and suddenly it was cool to be a little spooky in prime time. So every serialized genre in prime time owes a debt of gratitude to Carter and the X-Files for making genre safe in prime time. So through the years, as you saw, TV Guide named it one of the best cult hits ever, one of the top 50 TV shows of all time, one of the 60 greatest dramas of all time, and 2 episodes even landed on our 100 greatest episodes of all time. And now, let's meet the people who made that happen. Starting off with a panel of producers that, bar none, is the most star-studded producer panel here at Comic-Con. David Amon wrote episodes like Terms of Endearment, Agramala, Invocation, and Hellbound, and he's since then worked on shows like Castle, Without a Trace, and Crossing Jordan. David Amon. Next up, he did episodes like Pusher and Leonard Best and Small Potatoes, X-Cops. Today he was nominated for another Emmy for a little show called Breaking Bad. Next up, his episodes included Conduit, Caddish, Zero Sum, and he was also nominated today for an Emmy. A little show called Homeland. He also, of course, in 24, Howard Gordon. Oh man, he did Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, Project Chunks from Outer Space, and since then he's worked on things like Tower Prep, Millennium, and the upcoming Chloe Sevigny A&E drama, Those Who Kill. It's Darren Morgan. He did episodes like The Walk, Underneath, which he also directed, and since then has worked on Star Trek Enterprise, Supernatural, and Hell on Wheels. John Chabon. All right, his episodes included Home and Beyond the Sea and Musings of the Cigarette Smoking Man. Since then, he's worked on Final Destinations 1 and 3, he's directed Willard, and he's also working on Those Who Kill along with Darren. It's Glenn Morgan. He also is the other half of the famed Morgan and Long. At one point that was like one word, Morgan and Long. He worked on Home, Never Again, Beyond the Sea. Since then he's worked on Space Above and Beyond, The Others, The Event, and American Horror Story. Jim Wong. The man of the hour, The X-Files, Millennium, Harsh Realm, The Lone Gunman, of course, Fight the Future, and I Want to Believe. None of that would have ever happened without this man, Mr. Chris Carter. And now before we continue, Chris, I think we want to take a little trip down memory lane. Let's roll it. Folks, but just in case, this season you saw her on Hannibal, and you also... If she could be someone else for a day, who would it be? Hopefully herself. Dana Scully. Gillian Anderson. And also over here, you know now, is Hank Moody on Showtime's hit Californication. You find a conspiracy at a church picnic. Spooky Mulder himself, David. All right, guys, so 20 years. Chris, it's been 20 years. I'll let you delete your photo first. Chris, it's been 20 years. Okay, so first off, December 22, 2012. What happened? Did the aliens colonize? Are we all under the black oil now? What can you tell us?
They came, they're delaying their entrance.
Yeah, they take a little more time. So, talk about 20 years. Set up the scene for 1993. Actually, really 92 when you went in and pitched the show. It seems like a no-brainer, obviously, but back then, these kind of shows weren't necessarily in prime time. What was the reaction? What did you hear from Fox, and how hard was it to get this thing moving?
I think I've told this story about a million times. Fox, I pitched the show to Fox once. They said thank you very much. They didn't have anything like that. There was nothing like that on television. I went back and pitched it a second time with Peter Roth. I took some visual aids. They said yes, but I really don't think they knew what they had.
What were the visual aids?
Huh?
What visual aids?
Oh, I took some, a survey and some stuff. Anyway, they said yes, but they didn't know what they had until I think that we finally aired.
So, Gillian and David, 20 years later, maybe tell us something about your character that you maybe didn't even realize at the time, but thinking back now, you have maybe a different perspective on the show, or else on Mulder or Scully. I know, I start out with the hard questions first.
You have anything?
I guess I didn't realize that Mulder was so cool until a few years later, and I thought, damn, should have gotten there sooner. Not that it was my choice. Am I supposed to behave myself?
No, go on, please, go on.
Well, it took a long time, obviously, for Mulder and Scully to get together.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we ever did we?
Well,
something happened.
Yeah.
Because we had a child.
So someone did ask on Twitter the other day, Chris, are we ever going to finally get the Mulder Scully sex scene that
oh my God.
fans have been waiting for?
We shot it. It's somewhere.
Maybe you
You've said that before.
No, I can't. Let's get to it.
Oh my God.
Let's bring in the writers. I mean, everyone. Howard, Vince. So talk about what the show meant to you and how it still influences the shows that you now executive produce. Yeah, Vince, you could go first.
Well, there'd be no Breaking Bad without the X-Files. I started off my association with the X-Files as a fan. I was sitting alone in my little house in Powhatan County, Virginia in 1993 in September, I think, of that year, and this new show came on. I only had 4 channels. I didn't have cable at that time. So I figured I'd give this thing a watch because it sounds like it's got aliens or something in it. And by the end of the first commercial break, I was hooked, and I was a fan, and I loved it. And when the opportunity arose for me to write for it, I felt very, very lucky. And I worked on it for 7 years, and I learned everything that I do know about producing television and writing for television from this job. And it was a great, great job. It was like going to film school, except getting paid to attend, and I was just lucky as hell I was a part of it.
Howard, you're gonna add something to that as well.
Well, I wasn't in Virginia, I was already in LA, but I learned a lot, and a tremendous amount. I keep on, the words that come to mind are point of view. Chris always said, what's the point of view here? And I got to say, it was a group of people, I think, who taught each other, Glenn, Jim, Alex, Gonza, me, and Chris, and we really kind of figured it out on the fly, and I learned an awful lot, and I've carried it with me and think about it still.
So, David and Jillian, back to you guys. I mean, obviously you've gone on to fantastic careers post-X-Files, but you've enjoyed sort of dipping back into it with the 2008 movie, and you both said that you'd be interested in doing it again. Is there just something about these characters, about this show, that you still sort of enjoy looking back at every once in a while, or?
Well, I always thought the show kind of had any possibility. The show was so flexible and could encompass so many different ideas, and I think we could do it forever. Or I always thought, whenever we can do it, come back together, we would. So we will. As much as we can. Yeah.
So, Chris? It's the big question. We might as well get out of the way now. It's going to be the elephant in the room all hour. X-Files 3.
Well, we can get to it later.
Darren's starting a riot. Well, the other thing, and Howard knows a little something about this, because you guys are bringing back 24 for a limited series. Is that something Chris would consider doing? Sort of and obviously David and Jillian, is that something you'd be interested in?
No.
No?
Good answer.
No, but a film would be great.
Film would be great? All right. I mean, obviously a lot's changed in 20 years. Chris, how would the show look now? How if you were doing X-Files in 2013?
I don't think it would look all that much different. I mean, we sort of, the show was very dark and by design, and I don't think it would be a lot different. I think the technology has changed. I think it would probably, that would affect some things, but I think what we did is really what we would do now.
And one of the amazing things about it, when you look at the show, even though it took place in '93, it feels so relevant, especially with what's going on in the real world. But even back then, they were using technology that was advanced for its time. I mean, they were using cell phones in '93, and
no, I don't think we were. We were just talking about on the way up here how on the set of the pilot we had the cell phone that was a brick in a briefcase. Yeah. So I don't think we actually used cell phones in the show for a couple of years, right?
I don't think so in the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I remember seeing is when Mulder needs to look up something, he actually goes to books and looks it up.
Yeah, all the writers did that, actually. That was before Google, and we had, I think our researcher in our last few years is actually here today, Katrina. We started the show before the internet, really, so it was the old school.
Darren, talk about being Fluke Man. I know you've talked about it before, being in that costume, but more importantly, Eddie Van Blunt's The Age of Silence. Two sort of, seminal moments for your career, I imagine.
The actors are listening.
it was just a dream to get to work with David and Jillian. Because being in the Fluke Man suit, you really got to interact, especially in the pool with David. I don't know quite what else more to say.
And John, your son played Scully's baby at 6 weeks old.
Indeed, indeed. It was end of season 8, and he had just been born, and he had reddish kind of hair. And I remember Michelle McLaren, who was our producer at the time, said, "Wait, why don't we use Jerry as Scully's baby?" And now he's here actually. Give him a shout out there.
He looks like me. That's our son. Told you.
What is William up to these days, Chris?
Oh, well,
He's in rehab.
But show about the, well, let's talk about, I mean, the comic book just came out, and that's season 10. You have officially blessed it. So a lot of people are wondering, how canon is that? And will these storylines sort of feed into whatever you do next, a movie, what have you?
No, it's a comic book series, so I think the stories really sort of are more comic booky. But we wanted to make them sort of true to the characters, and the writer Joe Harris has really good ideas, so I think they're going to be terrific on their own. They're called Season 10, but they're kind of their own mythology.
And, you know, we're starting to see a lot of the old characters, what Skinner's been up to, who's been promoted, and then Doggett and Reyes are going to show up. Is there a chance we'll ever see those two again on the big screen?
I think that's your trick question.
I'm trying, guys, I'm trying. Well, let's, Vince, John, and Chris. Let's, yeah, the 3 characters I think everyone loved, and yeah, I think we were all bummed to see go with the lone gunman. Do you guys ever look back and say, maybe we shouldn't have killed them, or was that obviously just sort of part of the life cycle of the show?
We had a big argument about that, as I recall.
Yeah.
You wanna take that?
No. No, they're great characters created by these gentlemen right here, and you know, and Vince and Chris and Frank and I did the spin-off, and they're just such amazing characters, and you know, they were Braidwood was a crew member and gets cast, but they were just great. And so when it came the time when the Lone Gunman series was not picked up, you know, that's when the discussion started. What do we do? How do we, you know, we want to give closure to people. And, you know, their death came up, and some of us were against it, some of us were for it. And I think it was an honorable death.
I think that people don't know that the character played by Braidwood, Frohickey, that his name was supposed to be Frohike, wasn't it? Was it Frohike, the pronunciation originally? I'm actually asking you, Julie Lynn.
Oh, no, it was Frohickey.
Was it Frohickey?
I remember Frohickey was a first AD on the show.
great.
Yeah, and we were trying to cast, I was in Vancouver trying to cast the show, and I remember looking at all these actors, and I thought, you know, Braidwood looks freaker than anybody I've seen. So he was the only, I think, the only AD I know in history to have been an AD on a show and became a star of a brand new show. So it's been interesting.
And Morgan Wong, I call you that just because that's what we always refer to you. You probably hate that by now, but I know, and you guys have been asked a lot through the years about home. But yeah, I went back and watched that episode last week, and it's such an amazing episode, and in some ways, one that you know was so ahead of its time. You guys tired of talking about that, or are you still are you still proud of it? Are you sick of answering you know about how Fox you know deciding to you know pull it off the schedule?
Jim and I had gone off and we did a show called Space Above and Beyond, and kind of thought that got the shaft a little bit, and said to Chris, we're coming back, we're going to write 4 episodes, and we're going to write these episodes for the members of the show, the cast members that didn't expose them to a wider audience. And Chris said, okay. So Rodney, Morgan, and Joel, I want to put them in something. And the Peacock brothers just was too much prosthetic, so he kind of put them through other stuff. But, you know, I think any of these guys can tell you that any episode or story has a lot of different sources. Kristen, my wife back there, told me, you gotta watch this movie, Brothers Keeper, by these guys, Bruce and Joe. They did the documentary on the first one on the West Memphis 3. And it was these 3 brothers, and there were 4 of them up in Syracuse where Darren and I grew up, and it was a great documentary. And they were kind of incestuous, you know, if they had murdered each other and all this kind of stuff. It's a great documentary. Well, no, check it out. And from that, you know, Jim and I were coming back to this, and you start thinking about home and people you love, and first and foremost, you should always approach what's happening with the characters, and it seemed like an opportunity to talk about where Scully would be wanting to be a mother, and what their relationship was, and what it was like to come home. And there was actually a place called home in Pennsylvania, so set it there. I had read a book, it's Charlie Chaplin's autobiography, and I don't know, I never went back and looked, so if anyone goes, that's not what happened, okay, but my memory is that Charlie Chaplin, when he was in musical theater, what we would call vaudeville, and he had to take residence in a tenement house, and there's a family there, and they take a they have dinner, and they take a liking to Chaplin, because, you know, who wouldn't? And they go, oh, we want to show you something. We like you, we want to show you something. And they took him back to this room, and had, like, you know, 1 gas flame or a bare bulb, and just a cot. And they, under the cot, they roll out a teenage boy with no arms or legs. And they stood him up, and the family kind of clapped and sang, and the boy kind of danced. And then they put him back on the roller and put him back under the bed. And Chaplin immediately left. And like for 20 years, well, a long time, I wanted to put that, something like that, into a show. And so when Jim and I were kind of figuring out that story, I'm like, yeah, we gotta do that Chaplin thing. And then Jim Wong, you know, he's just on the couch, suck up some opium. They go, it's the mother. And so you go, yeah, I want to go to the bed. And the whole thing was, you know, there's this other book called Dark Nature, and I forget the author, and it was all about, is nature moral, that mallard ducks will gang rape, and the cute little sea otters over at SeaWorld, you don't really want to hang out with them. And so if you had people behaving like nature, behaving that way, maybe we wouldn't look so good, and I guess we don't look so good because we had 1 airing and then it was banned. And Jim and I don't get rerun money for that. And, so anyway, the point of all that long-winded story was that I hope that, you know, that we're not all the sick creeps that you think. It wasn't just some thing to get kicked off of TV. There was a point behind it, but glad we did it.
Well, there is that poignant moment. It's just kind of this funny moment between Mulder and Scully talking about their families, and just one of those, we actually asked the fans to tell us some of their favorite Mulder and Scully moments. And I mean, there are a ton. You take all day talking about it, but everything from the dance at the end of Postmodern Prometheus to Mulder teaching Scully how to play baseball, you know, naturally. I personally love the Mulder, Scully, and Skinner bathtub scene. Oh, no. Because it was just so surreal. I love that episode. And that was yours, right, David? That was your episode. That was a lot of fun. Tell us a few of your favorite Mulder Scully moments. Julian, you want to start, or David?
Well, you mentioned one. I like very much the one from the Postmodern Prometheus when we get up to dance. That's the one that always, whenever I'm asked that question, I think of that one. That just had a great feeling to it. Julie?
There was somebody recently told me about the conversation on the rock, or what's come to be known as that, and now I don't actually remember it.
It was when I say I wanted to be born without a leg, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That was Quagmire.
Yeah.
Quagmire. And anyway, so I had some T-shirts made up that I've been selling off at Comic-Cons. I have COTR across the front of them.
Conversation on the rock.
Yeah, that's all I gotta give.
The other thing we asked were some of the favorite baddies, and why don't we go down the line, because David, at the end, we haven't heard from you yet. Cerulean Blue is one, there you go, but what, your favorite baddie, let's go down the line. Your favorite, either from the mythology or from the Monster of the Week?
I was a big fan of the guy I was in your episode in Paper Hearts, I think. Was it Tom Noonan?
Tom Noonan.
What was the character's name?
Tom Noonan.
It's been 20 years, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Anyway.
Patrick, no.
Oh my God.
In any event, he was. I thought he was great.
Yes. No. Yes.
She's a no. So we trust her.
R-O-C-H-E. Roche. It was Roche.
Yes, Roche, yes.
But that was also one of the really.
You can quiz us for the rest of the night.
It was one of the fun things about working on the show too, is that you got to sometimes do some very rich character work on the villains. So it was something that the show paid attention to and wanted to invest in.
How about you, Vince?
Gosh, so many. He's not a bad guy at all, really, but he was the central antagonist of an episode was the wonderful character played by Peter Boyle in Damon's episode. He was obviously not the bad guy, but the engine of story in that particular episode, and I love that one very much.
Yeah, and you guys got some amazing guests through the years. I mean, Peter Boyle is just one example. To do some great stuff, and you know, even obviously, one guest inspired you to do Breaking Bad, right, Vince?
Yes, indeed. I did an episode. I guess as far as fruitful villains. For me personally, was Bryan Cranston was in an episode at the beginning of season 6, and meeting him, working with him in that episode was called Drive, and his name was Patrick Crump, named after my brother Patrick, and then a high school teacher I had named Mr. Crump. Actually, Roach was another high school teacher I had. I don't know what the hell that's about.
Something happened.
But yeah, that was fruitful for me personally, meeting Bryan Cranston through the X-Files.
And Howard, how about you?
What was the name of the character Darren played in
Eddie Van Blunt?
Oh, Eddie Van, yeah.
I don't know why you're asking about food. Show me your butt crack. Let's see the tail. This was come on, show. We got to see a little skin here.
I think we were shooting that scene where I tackle you and I pull down your pants to see if you had a
come on, show him, Darren.
And I pulled it down too far, and I don't think I've ever laughed quite as hard. By accident.
You went to HR that day, they settled it out of court, it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, Howard, you also helped create Krychek.
That's right.
A seminal baddie on the show, and Krychek was fascinating through the years only because of his ups and downs in terms of his relationship with everyone else.
Yeah, he evolved. I think, at the time he was mostly somebody who filled space in Jillian's maternity leave. I think he was kind of a stopgap, and he grew into this wonderful character who, lost so much, including his arm.
Including his arm.
His life.
So Darren, how about you? Besides yourself, of course. We can name 2 of you as one of the baddies, but...
I was going to say Luke Van Blunt, just because I'm being honest.
And you still love that costume.
Do you have it? Does it?
I do have, Chris gave me the little monster creature from Humbug that comes out of the thing. And so at Halloween, that's where we put the candy. The kids have to reach in. And some of them are not brave enough.
John, talk about the butt genie.
The butt genie. Remember the butt genie? Episode season 7 called Bad Law, or 8, season 8. No, it actually was a learning experience for me. I learned one of the things I learned from Chris and these talented writers up here was always question what you've done and see if you can make it better, you can make it scarier. And I had this pitch. I remember I was in Vancouver actually producing an episode of Lone Gunman, and I had done some research in a book about Indian fake. It was a book? Yes. And about an East Indian fakir who could make himself tiny, and the pitch was he crawls in your ear and it controls you from inside like Pacific Rim or something. So that was the pitch, and Chris heard the pitch and was and thoughtful about it, and he said, well, you know, it would be scarier if it went in his ass. And I thought about it, and I said, God damn it, he's right. And it really it gave us humor in the episode, it made it scarier, and that character that Deep Roy played was the fake hero who had no legs and wheeled himself around on a cart. I always thought was quite frightening, and it was a lesson for me.
By the way, start lining up, because as soon as we're done with the row, it's going to be time for some questions, so get ready for that. So, Glenn, you're up next.
Eugene Victor Toom.
Jim, how about you?
I think I have to pick the cigarette smoking man.
Yes. Obviously, again, another character that started out just as an extra, as an aside, and became the villain of the show.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. We did an episode where we found out a little bit about him, and he did some bad things.
Julia, who's your favorite Gabby?
I was also going to say Toombs, but then there was the, who is the oil guy? The big guy, you know that big guy?
Did you watch the show?
the ice man. What was the character's name?
The bounty hunter.
That's pretty freaky.
I'm not going to give you a serious answer, but there was a moment, and it was late, we were shooting in LA here, and I don't remember the episode's name, but sometimes you have to react to the bad guy. He's going to be either CGI enhanced or somebody's not in the suit yet of the bad guy, and so sometimes as an actor you have to, you know, act to a tennis ball or whatever they have there. So I was told by the director, it was Michael Watkins, that this was a hideous, terrible, terrible monster, and that I was going to be terrified of it. And remember, we were acting like a couple in that and so I did my reaction, and I was terrified, doing the best I could, and then the guy came out in the suit, and I'll never forget, Michael Watkins, the director, said, he looks like the guy who Mrs. Butterworth. That's my favorite thing.
Chris, you got to top that now.
I think the Peacock Brothers, but actually, I'm going to just take the opportunity to give a nod to John Neville, who played the well-manicured man, who died recently or in the last couple of years and was an amazing asset to the show.
Let's start with the questions now. First up, I guess we're right over here.
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm Rachel, and this question is mostly for David and Julian, but we'd love to hear from anyone. Okay, if Mulder and Scully were to ever go on a real live date, what do you think they would do on that date?
Have sex.
dinner?
I think it would be barbecue.
Next up.
Hi, I'm Chris, and I want to say thank you to Chris Carter and the entire production writing team for scaring the hell out of us every week and massively moving the genre light years ahead. So thanks to you guys for some amazing work. David and Jillian, was there ever, in all those years, a scene that you wanted to shoot, that you were unable to shoot, or didn't happen? What would it be? And give us a little bit of dialogue.
Are there kids in the audience? No.
And Jillian, you already said sex.
Honestly, a scene you can think of that we didn't do?
You're gonna get that sex scene one way or another.
This crowd, they're up for some Mulder and Scully action.
Yeah, you know.
What a few more beats than that.
Yeah. Well, you want to see that right now, dude?
We can give you time to think about it.
That is a good question, but I can't think of anything.
All right, we'll go to the next one.
Hi, I'm Katie. Growing up with this show as a kid, I really, really loved the Monster of the Week episodes, and I wanted to ask the writers if there was ever a Monster of the Week that you thought of and really liked the concept, but that never made it to air.
If you could do one last X-Files episode, what would it...
I actually had asked Drew Barrymore to be in the show because I wrote a movie called Home Fries in 1990, came out in 98, and she seemed interested, and I was going to do this character where she was, because I love, aside from the X-Files, I love Twilight Zone, and there was the kid, the Billy Mooney episode where the kid can wish people into the cornfield, and I wanted to do an episode with Drew Barrymore having that kind of power, that amazing sort of godlike power over people, but then her agent called me up and said, "Stop bothering my client." So, you know, put out a restraining order, and so that never happened.
I had a question from Twitter real quick for David and Jillian. When do you think your characters finally realized that they were in love with each other? Do you remember a moment where you think on the show where you thought, okay, these two actually are in love?
Chris, do you recall?
I think it was when you first walked into his office in the basement.
Good answer, Chris.
Good answer. There was something I remember in terms of characters or episodes, not written or characters, but I remember having a conversation with Tom Waits because you guys wanted him on the show, and I think for some reason he and I ended up having the phone conversation, me trying to convince him to come on the show and do it, and I think he wasn't able to, but that was a pretty cool moment in my life.
Got another question.
How much of a long-lasting impact do you think having a strong female main character on a sci-fi show had on the entire genre?
Is that for me?
Yeah, let's hear it.
You go.
On the entire genre, I mean, I think just in terms of the feedback that I've gotten from young girls, young women, grown-up women throughout the last couple of decades, I mean, Scully had quite a huge impact on people from just, you know, her aspects of her personality and her personal strength and things that she stood up for, and you know, she was also a decent human being, and you know, people listened to her. She got to boss people around, and
That's a good question for Chris too. I mean, because obviously you created such a strong.
In terms of the genre, I think probably it's a question more for you than.
Scully was kind of my fantasy woman. She was strong and smart and opinionated and resourceful, tough, all those things that I, like. And it was kind of a fantasy relationship as well, that was as intellectual as it was anything else.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Kathy. My question is for Chris Carter. In Dana Scully's character, you chose to have her have a very spiritual aspect to her character. And I'm curious as to why you chose to weave a religious thread through a series about extraterrestrials.
It was a natural for me because she was a scientist, but that made her character a sort of slightly one-dimensional character, and that if she had a religious upbringing, it was always tearing at her that she believed in something that was by virtue sort of irrational. So she had these two warring sides of her character.
Everyone wants to believe just different things. Next up.
Hi, my name is Sid, and my question is for Jillian. What was the hardest part for filming The House of Mirth, which I love?
Well, it was kind of my first film, and so that was challenging anyway, and doing it within the hiatus of the show. But it was it was complicated. Terrence Davies is a complicated man, and in a wonderful way, he has a bit of genius in him. And I think probably above all else, it was just us trying really hard to manifest his ideas. But that's really, it wasn't. I've worked on a lot harder things than that since then.
All right, next up.
Hi, I'm Mary. First off, thank you. Were you watching the X-Files? Definitely got me through my freshman year of college.
Sorry, what are you wearing?
Anyway, my question was...
You have to ask in Pikachu's voice.
Sorry. My question was, I mean, definitely the X-Files was recognized as making genre TV safe for network TV. And what do you think it was about the open-ended format that spoke to a modern audience?
It's, people sort of credit us with making popular or useful this mythology formula, that you could actually have a show that had a serialized quality, and we had sort of both. The show was a lot of things. But I think Vince pointed out something in a recent article, which I actually had forgotten about, is that there was a show called Wise Guy, which was actually serialized long before the X-Files. So people had done the open-ended thing before successfully. But I think that we showed that you could actually have a sort of spine to the show, which was an ongoing storyline that people would come back to week after week.
Was it ever tough to sort of determine when you were going to go far into the mythology versus doing standalones?
Well, we actually figured it out like on the fly. We didn't know that was going to happen. We knew there would be a mythology, and it just kind of played out that way. And we did a two-parter in season 2, Colony and the Endgame, and people ate it up. And that was like, for us, it was like, oh, we can do this, and we can do it several times a season, and it worked.
Next question.
Hi, my name's... Oh, that was loud. Sorry. Hi, my name's Alicia. This is for both Jillian and David. I'm just wondering, since the X-Files was filmed in, for like season 5 was Vancouver, and then 6 to 9 was in
LA.
California, whatever it was. What was your favorite place to shoot?
Oh, well, I think don't look at me like that. We kind of grew up as a group, as a show, as performers, Jill and I, in Vancouver, just all came together in the beginning there. So I think nostalgically, I'll always have that'll be, for me, the X-Files home.
Well, you guys made a point of shooting the movie back in Vancouver, so you guys went back.
Yeah, that would be just location contingent, so Chris would have determined that. But, you know, just the energy of beginnings and getting to know all these people and just starting something that we didn't know what it was going to be, you know, and that being in a strange city at that time for all of us, it was all of one piece.
I think I have to agree. I mean, in both places, we created families. There was a big family that we had up there, which was the crew, and there was a completely different family that we developed over the time in Los Angeles. And both of them were equally strong and very, very different. It was completely different shooting in Los Angeles than it was in Vancouver. And I mean, aside from the how much more expensive it was for us to shoot down here, but it was also just things changed in terms of the amount of time that both David and I were actually on the show. There were more characters. We ended up having more time off, I think, once we came down to LA, which kind of felt like a novel idea. That was quite enjoyable, but I think Vancouver probably nostalgically.
Great, next up.
Hi, my name's Becky. I know that the character of Dana Scully was a physics major and inspired me to major in physics and go through and get my PhD, and thank you. Now, you either have thought about doing anything to inspire other women in physics, this is something you've heard a lot, that people will go on in physics because of Dana Scully's science background.
A lot of women actually have come up to me and told me that they went into physics because of Scully, and I think there was also something that was written in a science textbook, something called the Scully effect, which was just a huge amount more women who were getting into the sciences around when the X-Files was on than they had experienced before.
From my point of view, men often come up to me and say that they got into Scully because I
imagine a lot of people come up to you wanting to be Hank Moody, though, but that's a whole different thing. Next up.
Hi, I'm Meredith. This question is for Chris Carter. So when X-Files first came out, it was set in the post-Cold War era, and those dynamics seemed to really influence a lot of the show. I was wondering, how do you see sort of the relevancy of many of those themes in sort of today's new changing world dynamics, new threats, new critiques about the government? And do you think those dynamics would change how you write or you would have written the show?
Yes. The suspicions and the conspiracy theories are so much more, they're rampant today. And so I think that we would definitely, I think if the X-Files were to come back now, it would actually have the same sort of, you could do the show now, is what I'm saying, where you couldn't really do the show in 2002 because everyone trusted the government or wanted to trust the government. So it was a completely different world. So we went through a period there where I think the X-Files was not relevant.
Next up.
Hi, I'm Kayana, and I just want to know which episode creeped you out the most.
Who's the question for?
Anybody? Darren.
Beyond the Sea. Just kidding.
Anything with black oil in it? No? Chris, what creeped you out when you wrote it or when you watched it? When you watched your own show, was there anything that really creeped you out?
I think seeing Darren in that toilet, that porta potty, that was pretty creepy.
It's pretty creepy from the other view.
Next up.
Hi, how's it going? So I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about the impetus of my favorite X-Files episode, Jose Chung from Outer Space, and what it was like to work with the national treasure that is Charles Nelson Riley.
Darren?
Do you want to talk about working with Charles? Do you want to talk about working with Charles? You had no scenes with him. Not Jillian, not you, Jillian. Yeah.
Loved him on Match Game.
I mean, he was just a laugh. I just remember him as being, you know, he was very funny, he was very charming, he was very camp, obviously. He was fun. He was irreverent, and he was fun.
Did you write that part for him, Darren?
I wanted, no.
Who did you want?
Rip Taylor, because I like confetti. He wasn't available. Well, the original idea for the episode is I had, before I started working on the show, I had the idea of the teaser, which was two kids are being abducted by a couple of aliens, and then a third alien comes down and abducts them all. And I pitched the idea to Jim Long, like my first day at work, and Jim said, "Never bring that up ever again." Unfortunately, Jim left the show in the final season, so that's why I did it. So thanks, Jim.
All right, next up.
We have time for one more question.
I wanted to thank you all for coming, because I know none of you are really regulars on the convention circuit, and it really means a lot that you came out with us. My question is for Jillian. I know after the X-Files ended, you said you'd never do TV again, and yet you did a show in the UK called The Fall, and you're doing Hannibal. And so I was wondering if there's something about detective characters that speak to you, or what it is that brought you back to our televisions again.
It was mostly just because of the time commitment, and after having, you know, when the series ended, I didn't know whether I wanted to be on another set again, period, for, you know, for a very long time, just out of exhaustion, and but you know, after enough time passed, and looking at material that was coming my way, and saying no for such a long time to so many things, and realizing it's just about timing. It's about you know, when The Fall came across my my desk, it was exactly the kind of thing that exactly the type of material that I respond to and that I would want to watch, and I feel very strongly about that piece, and so that's what started it. And then, you know, initially it was NBC, them offering me a short arc on Hannibal, which I figured was probably going to be the 3 episodes that it was, and I said to them from the beginning that I wasn't likely to do more than that, but then the character kind of grew on me, and I had a lot of fun with Mads, and it's a great show, and it's shot beautifully, and it feels like a nice team to be a part of, and so that's kind of what it was about.
David and Jillian, do you think we'll see you ever work together in roles other than Mulder and Scully, guesting on each other's shows, or doing something else?
Well, apparently not.
David?
I've always, you know, to be honest with you, and not, I've always felt like there's something, sacred is the wrong word, but I always felt like there was something just so special about, you know, Mulder and Scully, that it would have to, I love Jillian, I'd love to work with her, but it would have to be something that I can't think of in order to cross that line and cross up those lines between those 2 characters. So that's my honest answer.
Chris, we're getting to the end of the panel now. Let's talk about the future. So, when will we see X-Files 3, and will it be about the alien conspiracy?
I have to say, just being here today and seeing all these people, you need reason. You need a reason to get excited about going on and doing it again, because it's hard work. But actually, this is where
So what were you saying?
Okay. I said it.
All right, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, obviously, and hope for the best. We'll continue to trust no one. The truth is out there, et cetera, onward and onward. 20th anniversary. Oh, and then one final thing, by the way, I promised 20th home video that I would let you guys all know about something exciting going on with, as I'm stalling, finding their piece of
and while he's doing that, you see this this stand-up cutout thing over here of the two of us? Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. I'll sell it to the highest bidder. For charity. You gotta go quick. Oh. Got 300. 600. Holy crap. Is it 600? Is it 1,000? Anybody can go higher than 1,000?
Darren Morgan told me 3,000.
1,000?
Well, let's turn it into an auction.
Can't hear you. 1,500. No, 2,000.
This is how we're going to get the movie made, by the way.
This is our Kickstarter. What are we at?
2,000.
It is signed! It is signed! Come on! I'll write something special on it.
While we're doing that, does someone from 20th Home Video want to go to the microphone and tell us the promotion that's going on? Do not have that in my notes here. It's something amazing for the 20th anniversary involving Xbox, but in the meantime...
It's that sex scene.
That sex scene that you guys were looking at.
Audience interactive.
Thank you everyone for attending this panel, the 20th anniversary of the X-Files.